session for CAT afternoon slot paper. What a roller coaster ride the CAT examination days are. From morning slot to evening slot, we go through all possible flavors and experiences. So with the preliminary analysis that we have recently just beamed live on YouTube, you can access that particular video if you have missed it. We already discovered that this was decidedly more difficult a paper than last year. And in fact, from the analysis of the faculty members and students' inputs from the morning slot, we also discovered that it was a tad bit more difficult and slightly different also in the quant question descriptions, topic coverages than the slot one. So without much ado, let's look at what are the strategy learnings we can derive when a paper like this happens, because this is especially important, first of all, for the slot 2 aspirants if you are watching this video. Secondly, for slot 3 aspirants, if you discover some of these surprises or difficulty pointers, what could be the best strategy that you could have? So very clearly speaking, in terms of the number of questions and the pattern of the paper, this is not really very different from slot 1. Just like in verbal ability, instead of unequal number of questions of last year, 3 variety and 2 from 3 varieties of verbal questions. This year there were 2 questions totaling to 8 again, but from 4 variety of verbal questions. The same thing continues here also right now. So in terms of number of questions and pattern, there is no decided surprise really, so to say. But the real surprise happens over here. So in the English section, 2 RC passages compared to 1 in the morning slot are being reported as difficult to read, and the one which is slightly easier to read has questions which are slightly convoluted and difficult to comprehend. You have to really focus hard on the questions and then understand what are we supposed to find out, contradict or agree or project the author's opinion, and then you go back to the paragraph to try and understand how to differentiate from the options one by one. So clearly, it is going to be very, very important to understand during the scanning stage which RCs to select and so on and so forth. We'll come to the strategy input part because of an observation like this. In the DILR part, one new thing that happened, and this is something which is part of the theoretical training at time, which is how to understand different types of data representations. Why is it that sometimes we have to learn with data interpretation from a point of view of a table? Why a Venn diagram? Why a bar graph? Why a pie chart? How are pie charts constructed? What happens when the data has a mistake? How to find a mistake? How to use your mathematical skills? That is what data interpretation is all about. So there was a caselet here which was needing the candidate to re-represent the data in terms of a Venn diagram oriented layout, and then the missing values in the Venn diagram had to be found out with the clues. So without doubt, a difficult proposition, but in terms of understanding and conceptual clarity, this kind of a training would have really helped students in terms of mastering this particular attempt, because this was clearly a doable caselet, provided conceptually the student understands that the data given was a bar graph and the data had to be converted to a Venn diagram, and then we use the Venn diagram set theory concepts to be able to find the missing values. So that was a new thing and a welcome change, I would say. As a trainer, different data value usage approaches were needed. For example, there was a scatter diagram where the values were integral, like we understood in the first cut analysis video being just a couple of minutes back. But the integer values that you have to take between 1 to 100, if you randomly take a lot of integer values, then I'm sure there's a lot of calculation and mental load and decimal values coming into picture in the calculations given in the scatter diagrams. But if you took it in multiples of 10, then a lot of numbers got fit in very, very easily. So your comfort with dealing with scatter diagrams where exact values are not given, but likely value ranges are given, and then you have to populate it by choosing values. Such approaches might be useful. And overall, this was clearly more difficult DILR than last year. This is something that we discovered in the detailed analysis of morning slot 1 also. So the attempts are going to go down. Quant. One very big difference from morning slot was that there is no higher maths question. There's no modern maths question. There were probably equal number of questions between arithmetic and algebra. Numbers questions, which was only 1 in the morning, became 3 out here. So it tends to make an unequal kind of a setting in terms of slot 1 paper quant and slot 2 paper quant comparison in terms of number of topics. So there are differences of that particular nature. Second thing that we understood in terms of difficulty level surprises is that the questions in the quant were decidedly more multi-concept questions. where not just one particular topic, but another topic of mathematics is also involved. And secondly, some of the questions clearly wanted you to find the largest possible or the minimum smallest possible number. So just a simple value which satisfies that question's logic was not enough. You had to play with fair degree of maximum minimum. This automatically makes this paper decidedly clearly more difficult, a shade more difficult than last year's maths also. So these are the difficulties or the surprises or the uniqueness, unique items of the paper that you would have discovered had you gone through the sections one by one. Now, what are the strategy implications for us? If we discover during our sectional time spent that some RCs are like this and quant is becoming like this and DILR it is like this, one caselet is doable but it needs to be re-represented, other one has to assume a lot of values, can we randomly try values or should we go systematic with an approach? So the strategy inputs would be something like this. First of all, in VARC, especially in RC, because that is what just now happened in slot 2, you should always begin the paper by scanning multiple lines from multiple paragraphs of the RC so that you understand the complexity of the author's narrative style way in advance before diving into the passage, because the opening line or the subject matter looked inviting for you. But then as you began reading, by the time you reached paragraph 3, you understood that it's very difficult to understand and comprehend the subject matter, and the ease of understanding of the first statement is not continued by the author by the time you reach paragraph number 3 or 4. So then you feel like, should I continue? Should I leave? So such mismanagement or error in judgment during the RC reading is not advisable at all. So the strategy point, as we have always maintained, because we cannot predict what is going to come in the given slot of the CAT. Similarly for slot 3, which is coming up shortly. So always scan multiple lines from multiple paragraphs so that you have a very good judgment based on your reading habits to be able to understand whether such type of narrative or writing styles or explanation styles or the kind of subject matter treatment, not only paragraph 1 but paragraph 3 or paragraph 4 also, is good enough for me to digest and understand, and therefore I want to read this RC. So don't take RC blindly in terms of reading only one line from one paragraph kind of a thing. That is point number 1. Point number 2, while reading RC itself, we'll understand, despite having chosen an RC, if it takes more time to comprehend because the language is complicated, then be open-minded to doing that rather than getting into the preset target in your mind that in the morning slot, so many people attempted so many. Last year, the cutoff was achieved in English by attempting so many. My strategy this year in test series has been attempting so many passages kind of a thing. It all depends upon what the current CAT paper is throwing at you. So you might need to redraw after the scanning and the judgment of which RC you want to do and how many verbal you have time for in terms of what would be a healthy number of attempts, because pure attempts don't get you the percentile. What will get you the percentile is how many are accurate. And given the difficulty level variations between the slots that we are already seeing today, and especially compared to last year, there's no guarantee that the same number of targeted attempts would work in all situations. So be very careful about scanning. In DILR, this happened in the morning slot also, and this is something that we have observed in the afternoon slot also. You obviously scan and look at the different caselets, and then you make up your mind which are the ones I want to do, 1 or 2 or 3, depending on the logic and your comfort factor with understanding the clues and so on and so forth. What is happening this year in CAT is, and something that will click you in scanning its stage itself, is that one caselet is coming out to be easily understandable, and many candidates would definitely spend time on that. But that caselet does not take enormous amount of time. In morning slot, there was one caselet which could have been done within 7, 8 or 9 minutes. In the afternoon slot, there was one caselet that could be located which could be done in maybe 10, 12, 13 minutes. But the residual time, now you have to look at all the remaining caselets which are decidedly a notch higher, either in terms of uniqueness of the description or the logical difficulty that they throw at you. The LR content is very high. So this is where it is going back not to last year, but to 2 years ago. It is becoming that difficult. We saw that in the analysis of the morning slot of CAT this year as well in DILR. So you should be mentally open to give uneven time spent distribution to the caselet. You cannot go by the theory that in 15 minutes typically I should do a caselet, because the second caselet is decidedly higher in difficulty. So it might not get done in 15 minutes. It might get done in 18 or 20 or 22 minutes. And you should be open to that idea, rather than thinking that all the remaining 3 are difficult. And if I'm not able to crack the logic in 7, 8 minutes worth of brainstorming, then let me leave this and go to the next one. Then you might hop and skip to the remaining 3 or 4 caselets by giving them 7 minutes each and still not be able to solve it. Rather than that, in the scanning itself, the judgment should become clear that I know that there are 3 or 4 difficult caselets and one of them is doable. I'll definitely do the doable. But in the difficult ones, whichever one I pick it up, I need to persevere with it. I need to really stay with it. Because if it is more difficult, it is not going to get cracked in 7 or 8 minutes. It is decidedly difficult because it is going to consume more time. So as a strategy pointer also, the scanning decision making in DILR caselet is going to be very, very high. Coming to quant, because of the conceptual challenges in the afternoon slot of the quant, even though higher maths questions were not there, but even in the arithmetic and algebra questions, there were questions involving maxima, minima. Questions which were not direct. For example, I said number theory questions were there, but number theory questions were not simple factorization in terms of, you know, the number of factors of a number and sum of all the factors and very direct concepts kind of a thing. Many of them involved a new concept. And therefore, deeper thinking is needed, not just looking at the familiarity of a topic, because throughout the year in your CAT preparation, maybe you have done time and work, you have done time, speed and distance, but the type of question that they're asking now might be lengthier, deeper in terms of concepts, or might be involving multiple concepts, not just time, speed and distance, but the solvability using a quadratic equation concept, for example. So therefore, scanning judgment should not be dependent on only whether it is time, speed, distance, whether it is arithmetic, whether it is algebra, whether it is geometry. You should also carefully analyze what in geometry, what in algebra, and also not just the doability, but because of the lengthiness of the concepts or the calculation scenario involved. This is something that happened in morning slot 1 also. You have to be careful about time distribution. So even though questions might look doable because the topics are familiar, but the conceptual challenge will be discovered later, and by that time you would have already invested 1.5 minutes in that question. And now if you're not able to solve it completely, and this happens for 4 or 5 questions back to back, then you are under tremendous pressure to take risks with your good luck and try and mark an answer or try and approximate a calculation, which is not recommended. In every difficult paper, the attempts of the candidates fall down, and therefore a high percentile can be achieved at even a lower number of attempts, provided you maintain your accuracy. So walking into a paper with a preset target in your mind because of what you heard about slot 1, what you heard about your mock test series that you did throughout the year, or what you heard about the last couple of years CAT papers, that will be very, very foolish. It's not recommended. CAT is a challenge, throws a challenge. We are already seeing these deviations and challenges coming in morning slot and afternoon slot. It's very important that we look at scanning as a very, very good tool, even for those of you who are very good with mathematics. Remember, today in the afternoon slot, when I was telling you a couple of videos ago in the YouTube live sessions, by the way, with such rich analysis that we are giving you sequential in many videos, be sure that you like and follow us, and also subscribe to get the alerts, because throughout the day we are busy with lots of novel activities and inputs which are coming your way. So do follow our YouTube channel. But couple of minutes ago, when we did be in that particular live episode, we told you that the level of difficulty varied how much. Even 10 questions couple of years ago were good enough to cross 99 percentile in the quant section out of 22. So therefore, to look at last year's CAT paper and say 14 or 15 attempts are needed for 99 percentile, and I am a very bright candidate, I must target 14 and 15, might not really happen because of the very sheer nature of the CAT paper that is thrown at you this year. So scanning is very, very crucial. You can do the scanning of quant questions, either all the questions in one go, so that you have a complete bird's eye view of the whole section. You know that this time paper is difficult, for example, and therefore you can focus on 5 questions doable by you, 7 questions doable by you, 12 or 13 doable by you, and then you can distribute your remaining time by focusing on only those questions. Or you can also do the scanning in groups of 6-7 questions each, so that you don't feel that I'm wasting too much time in clicking and scanning and making my judgment. Do 6-7 questions, click, look at your 3-4 doable, focus on them, click on the remaining 7, so that net you do justice. After coming out of the hall and after a couple of days when the CAT response sheet is released, then you don't want to discover that, oh my God, in my slot, these questions are also there, but I never reached them. I did not assess them. They are decidedly, half a minute shorter in terms of time consumption. They were also solvable, but I got involved in so many other questions beforehand. So that kind of mistake should not be there. So this is something I hope those of you who attempted slot 2 were able to deal with and do justice to in terms of scanning and time distribution and understanding the variability Not every DI caselet is the same, not every RC is the same, not every quant question is the same. And those of you who are about to go into slot 3 would keep these pointers in mind, because if you do discover something similar, do make sure that you watch a slot 1 video analysis that we have given on strategy as well, so that both these pointers are kept in your mind. In case something is applicable in slot 3, you make good judgments for yourselves. Wishing you all the best. Thank you.